On the morning of August 1st, 1966, the University of Texas at Austin campus basked under a sweltering summer sun, its sprawling grounds alive with the usual hum of student activity. The air, thick with the heat, carried the faint sounds of AM radio broadcasts, the clatter of typewriter keys, and the distant laughter of youth. It was a typical day, seemingly poised to unfold like any other in the heart of Texas. Yet, hidden within this ordinary backdrop, an extraordinary horror was about to unfold, one that would scar the nation's memory forever. Charles Whitman, a former Marine and architectural engineering student, methodically packed a footlocker with an arsenal of high-powered firearms and ammunition. His movements were precise, his planning meticulous. By mid-morning, he had transported his deadly cargo to the iconic UT Tower, a central fixture on the campus skyline. As the clock neared 11:48 a.m., the UT Tower, an emblem of academic achievement, transformed into a fortress of gunfire. Whitman positioned himself on the observation deck, turning the ornate structure into a sniper's perch. Below, the campus burst into chaos as bullets rained down, cutting through the normalcy of the day. Students, faculty, and passersby fell victim in an indiscriminate onslaught that would leave 16 dead and over 30 wounded. The headlines that day and the days following would not only recount the terror, but also mark the beginning of a new dark chapter in American history. The Austin Statesman, its front page a grim tableau of the day's events, captured the collective disbelief with a stark headline, "Sniper Turns Tower into Death Trap." This act of violence promised more than immediate shock. It heralded a shift in the American consciousness regarding mass shootings. The UT Tower shooting would come to be seen not merely as an isolated incident, but as a forewarning of an emerging era marked by similarly militarized violence in places once deemed safe. The more one learns about that fateful day, the more one wishes the innocence of that morning had remained unbroken. In the aftermath of the initial chaos, the narrative darkens further, delving into the depths of that tragic day. As the investigation unfolds, viewers are invited to subscribe and share their thoughts. Where were you when you first heard of such tragedies? The chronology of events on August 1st, 1966, warns of even more harrowing details to come, as the ordinary is eclipsed by the extraordinary, casting a long shadow over the University of Texas campus. Each step into this story might feel like a descent into a place where history's darker aspects lurk, waiting to be revisited. The stark reality of the tower transformed into a death trap compels a deeper examination. What would you do if your child vanished on a road like this, turned unexpectedly from a place of learning to a scene of terror? The question isn't just hypothetical, it's a grim invitation to explore the impact of sudden violence on a community and the nation. The morning of August 1st, 1966, dawned with the deceptive tranquility typical of a late Texan summer. At the University of Texas at Austin, students navigated the sprawling campus, the air thick with humidity and the distant echoes of AM radio broadcasts discussing Cold War tensions. Typewriters clacked in administrative offices and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered. It was a routine start, yet the day would soon document a grim deviation from the ordinary. Charles Whitman, a student and ex-Marine, had already begun his meticulous preparation. Earlier, he had penned a note detailing his troubled thoughts and the inexplicable drive towards violence that plagued him. This note, later recovered, offered a chilling glimpse into the mind of a man teetering on the brink of infamy. Whitman had methodically packed a footlocker not with books or engineering tools, his usual cargo, but with guns, ammunition, and supplies enough for a prolonged assault. His destination was clear, the iconic UT Tower, a central fixture of the campus, soaring above the youthful optimism below. Whitman's ascent to the observation deck of the tower was unhindered, his heavy footlocker arousing no suspicion. The era was one of innocence, where such a sight did not yet conjure images of impending doom. Upon reaching the top, he positioned himself strategically, transforming the ornate structure into a sniper's perch. Below, students and faculty moved about their day, unaware of the horror that was to unfold. As the clock edged closer to noon, the first shots rang out. They were sharp, an alien sound that seemed more at home on a distant battlefield than in these scholarly environs. Confusion ensued on the streets below. Some thought the sounds were part of a construction project. Others, more ominously, recognized them for what they were. The reality of the situation dawned slowly, a creeping horror that escalated with each passing moment. The local newspapers, like the Austin Statesman, would later headline the terror in bold print, capturing the nation's attention. But in those initial moments, the reports were fragmented, a jigsaw of panic and misinformation spreading across the campus and into the city. Police officers, unprepared for a scenario of this magnitude, scrambled to respond. Calls flooded the switchboards, voices crackling over radio waves, urgent and increasingly desperate. In this chaos, a broader narrative began to unfold, one of a nation grappling with the nascent reality of mass shootings. The UT Tower shooting would stand as a harrowing precursor to an all-too-familiar modern tragedy, marking a loss of innocence in American public life. The question lingered heavy as the summer air. Would you walk the same road if you knew who never came back? A century later, the silence is still deafening. The echoes of that day reverberate, a stark reminder of the moment when a serene campus was transformed into a tableau of horror, etching a permanent scar on the collective memory of a nation forever altered. As the University of Texas campus reeled under the initial barrage of gunfire, the horror unfolding was marked by a series of brutal firsts. Inside the tower, the perpetrator, Charles Whitman, had already committed his initial murders, methodically shooting the receptionist and a family ascending the tower, their presence in the wrong place at a tragically appointed time. These early victims, unknown to each other in life, were now forever linked in death, their stories etched into the dark annals of an ordinary morning turned grotesque. Whitman then positioned himself on the observation deck, his sniper's perch commanding a panoramic yet chilling view of the campus. Below, the early confusion on the streets morphed into a palpable terror. Students and faculty, initially bewildered by the sounds of gunfire, soon found themselves in a desperate bid for safety. The campus, a sprawling tapestry of youthful exuberance and scholarly pursuit, was abruptly transformed into a grim battleground. In the city, folklore began to take root amidst the chaos. Reports of a masked figure atop the tower circulated with a fervent whisper, blending the real and the unreal. This spectral image of Whitman, face obscured, was no mere man but a harbinger of death. A Gothic silhouette against the stark Texas sky, the community grappled with this terrifying narrative, some dismissing it as a heat-induced mirage, others whispering that perhaps the tower itself was cursed. They built their houses on cursed ground and wondered why death followed. Amidst the growing crisis, a stubborn vein of denial persisted. Many could not fathom that such violence could unfold in their midst. This disbelief was mirrored in the initial emergency responses. Calls to local police were met with incredulity. The severity of the situation was underestimated, the response delayed. It was a denial that cost precious minutes and, tragically, lives. The deeper we dig into the events of that day, the more the ground itself seems to whisper secrets of a disturbed past. The university, with its storied history and aspirations, was now the backdrop for a narrative it never wished to tell. As the reality of the sniper attack took hold, the community's narrative shifted from disbelief to a grim acknowledgement. The tower, once a proud symbol of academic achievement, was now a watchtower in a war zone. In those early hours, the pattern of Whitman's victims emerged haphazardly, a cross-section of campus life tragically halted. Each shot that rang out from the tower seemed to punctuate an invisible list of the doomed, their potential and futures obliterated with chilling randomness. This pattern, once fully realized, would paint a haunting picture of a day marred by violence, a tableau of horror that would forever alter the fabric of the University of Texas, and indeed, the nation itself. As the morning of August 1st, 1966 progressed, the University of Texas campus transformed under the weight of an unfathomable reality. The first shots, initially dismissed as an aberrant sound or a cruel joke amidst the summer languor, soon bore a gruesome testament to their deadly intent. On Guadalupe Street, the ordinary bustle warped into a scene of chaos as bullets rained down from the UT Tower, striking unsuspecting pedestrians with lethal precision. The concrete, warm from the relentless Texan sun, was suddenly marred by shadows of bodies, students, faculty, and visitors collapsing in mid-stride. Emergency calls flooded the local police lines, a cacophony of voices, frantically reporting the sniper. The police response, initially sluggish due to disbelief, now shifted into a desperate scramble to understand the scope of the assault. The echoes of gunfire melded with the sirens that began to wail through the city streets, a grim symphony that underscored the severity of the attack. As the reality of the sniper's presence bore down, the city of Austin instinctively began to pull its limbs inward. Shops shuttered their windows, and parents clutched their children close, whispering reassurances they themselves did not believe. The university administration, grappling with the unfolding horror, imposed an immediate curfew. The campus, usually vibrant with the comings and goings of intellectual pursuit, was stilled, its open spaces now potential killing fields. In the press rooms of local newspapers, typewriters clacked with an urgent rhythm, reporters and editors piecing together the narrative from the shards of incoming information. Headlines were cast in bold type, announcing the terror that had gripped the university town. Sniper on tower unleashes horror at UT Austin. The press became an inadvertent ally in the sniper's terror, broadcasting the unfolding tragedy to a nation unprepared for such violence, infiltrating its academic sanctuaries. The more details that emerged, the more the community wished for ignorance. Each bullet that found its mark seemed to unravel the very fabric of their reality. Each victim's name added to a growing list that no one wished to read. The children, sensing the distress in their parents' voices, whispered among themselves, repeating rumors and fragments of overheard conversations, giving voice to the fears their elders dared not articulate. In this atmosphere thick with dread, the question lingered, unspoken yet palpable. Would you dare to step into such a house knowing what was inside? The tower, an iconic structure visible from nearly every corner of the campus, stood as a stark reminder of the day's horrors, its observation deck now a perch for the macabre. As the sun continued its arc over Austin, the shadows lengthened and the reports of casualties climbed. The sniper, methodical and unhurried, continued his assault from his high vantage point, each shot a punctuation mark in a day that would be etched in sorrow and disbelief. The university, a place of learning and enlightenment, was now a crime scene, the lessons of the day written in bullet casings and bloodstains. The first incident had set a chilling pattern, a sequence of violence that would ripple outwards in waves of fear and grief. The Tower of Death, as it would come to be known, cast a long shadow over the nation, a forewarning of the dark days that lay ahead in America's confrontation with mass public shootings. As the sun bore down on the University of Texas campus, the relentless gunfire from the UT Tower observation deck continued its grim symphony, Below, the Austin police, initially equipped for a routine day, found themselves pinned down by the sniper's superior position and firepower. With standard-issue revolvers and shotguns, they were outmatched and exposed in the open grounds and surrounding streets. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected and extraordinary response began to unfold. Civilians, many of whom were military veterans, recognized the sound of gunfire and the pattern of a siege. They rushed to their homes, retrieving hunting rifles and high-powered scopes, returning to campus not as bystanders but as volunteer reinforcements. These armed civilians, perched behind trees and crouched in doorways, began returning fire toward the tower, attempting to suppress the sniper's shots, or at least distract him. The news of the shooting had by now reached beyond local radio stations and into the national consciousness. AP wire reports relayed the horror in terse bulletins that interrupted regular programming across the United States. Headlines screamed from extras hastily printed by newspapers, capturing the nation's shock at the scale and audacity of the attack. "Sniper on Tower unleashes terror at University," one headline declared, encapsulating the disbelief and fear that rippled through communities far from Austin. In the city itself, the impact was immediate and profound. Gun stores, normally quiet on a weekday, saw a surge in sales as residents of Austin and its environs, shaken by the day's events and driven by a newfound sense of vulnerability, purchased firearms for protection. This rush was mirrored in heated discussions among local law enforcement agencies. Jurisdictional frictions, typically dormant, flared as multiple departments coordinated responses under unprecedented circumstances. The lines of command and communication were tested as never before, laying bare the need for a unified emergency strategy. As the siege wore on, survival stories began to emerge from those trapped around campus. Students and faculty recounted harrowing moments of evasion and rescue, their testimonies painting a vivid tableau of courage and quick thinking. Some barricaded themselves in classrooms. Others, guided by instinct, fled towards less exposed areas. Each account contributed to a broader narrative of a community unexpectedly thrust into the role of survivors in a warlike scenario. In this grim tableau, the faces in the old photos of those involved, whether as victims, rescuers, or mere witnesses, seemed to carry an eerie prescience, as if those captured expressions of everyday academia knew somehow the horror that would unfold. These images, frozen in time, would later serve as haunting reminders of the day innocence was shattered by violence. The Tower of Death, as the UT Tower came to be known, stood as a chilling symbol of this transformation. Some secrets, like the motives and mind of the sniper, bled through the generations, remaining largely unchanged and unspoken, yet heavily felt. This historical scar, etched deeply into the community's memory, posed a lingering, unsettling question. What is scarier, the crime itself, or how easily parts of it were forgotten by those outside the immediate reach of its shadow? As night fell over Austin, the lights around campus flickered uneasily, mirroring the collective anxiety that perhaps the worst was yet to come. As the sun bore down on the University of Texas campus, the escalating terror of August 1st, 1966, continued to unfold with grim determination. The UT Tower, an iconic structure now synonymous with unspeakable violence, became the epicenter of a desperate and deadly confrontation. Inside the tower's narrow, echoing stairwells, the air was stifling, thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. Each step taken by the police and brave civilians was a step into the unknown, a climb toward a sniper who had turned this academic citadel into a fortress of death. Outside, the city of Austin was gripped by confusion and horror. News bulletins raced through the wires, the headlines screaming of a phantom killer atop the university tower. The local press, typewriters clattering relentlessly, fed a nation's growing appetite for real-time tragedy. The Austin Statesman's evening edition bore a stark headline: "Sniper in Tower Causes Havoc, Multiple Dead and Wounded." This sensational coverage not only informed but also inflamed the public's fear, painting a picture of a city under siege by an unseen assailant. Amid the chaos, misinformation was rampant. Reports of additional shooters spread like wildfire, leading to numerous false leads that diverted critical resources. The police scanner crackled with updates, each new report adding layers of complexity to an already frantic law enforcement response. This confusion necessitated an unprecedented move. Texas Rangers were called in to assist, their arrival signaling the severity of the crisis. The request for these seasoned lawmen was broadcast over police radios, a somber acknowledgement that the situation was spiraling beyond the control of local authorities. Inside the tower, the ascent was slow and fraught with peril. The climbers, a mix of officers and armed civilians, communicated with hand signals, their voices unnecessary against the backdrop of gunfire and the sharp, metallic echoes of the tower's architecture. Each corner turned could bring them face to face with death. Each doorway was a potential ambush. The weight of their task was immense, moving through an environment that was both hauntingly silent and intermittently pierced by the crack of Whitman's rifle. The artifacts of this day spent bullet casings, blood-stained steps, abandoned personal belongings told a story of panic and desperation. Every artifact carried more than dust, it carried guilt. The guilt of survival, the guilt of witnessing, the guilt of not having stopped the horror sooner. These silent witnesses, scattered and overlooked in the rush to save lives and end the threat, would later be collected, catalogued, and stored away, heavy with the weight of lives lost and a day seared into the collective memory of a nation. As the siege stretched into its harrowing conclusion, the community around the University of Texas campus braced itself. They told the public nothing but survivors remembered everything. Their stories, whispered in the corridors of hospitals and shared in the quiet of safe rooms, formed an oral history of trauma and resilience. These narratives, though not broadcast with the immediacy of bulletins, would in time become a crucial part of understanding the full impact of that day. Would you dare spend a night where they never returned? This question, posed in hushed tones among the more morbidly curious, captured the eerie fascination with the tower. It stood there, a grim monument to a day when ordinary life was shattered by the extraordinary intrusion of violence. As the shadows lengthened and the first stars appeared in the Texas sky, the lights in the tower flickered off, one by one, leaving the structure bathed in darkness, a darkness that was more than just physical, a darkness of a deep, pervasive trauma that would linger long after the last gunshot echoed away. In the shadow of the tower, as the city of Austin inhaled the aftermath, whispers of the day's terror circulated with a chilling persistence. The University of Texas campus, usually bustling with the vibrant life of summer, lay eerily silent, its usual hum replaced by the low murmur of disbelief and mourning. The ground beneath, scorched by the sun and stained with tragedy, held memories of hurried footsteps, desperate escapes, and sudden collapses, memories the community wished to forget but were etched deep into the fabric of the place. If the descent into the heart of this grim chapter unsettles you, consider subscribing before we ascend further into the darkness, awaiting at the tower's peak. Share this journey into historical horror, ensuring such stories are remembered not as spectacles, but as somber lessons from the past. As night settled over Austin, the once vibrant campus lights dimmed, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of the day's chaos. Each corner of the campus, each pathway and bench, now carried the weight of the day's horrors, a silent testament to the lives disrupted. The tower itself, a stark silhouette against the starless sky, stood as a grim reminder of the fragility of peace and the suddenness with which violence can shatter it. As dawn broke, the University of Texas at Austin was gripped by an eerie calm, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded the day before. The tower, now ominously quiet, bore the scars of the relentless gunfire that had rained down upon the unsuspecting city. The morning light did little to dispel the darkness that had settled over the campus, a darkness punctuated by the stark reality of the previous day's horrors. The final approach to the observation deck was a grim ascent, marked by the echoes of gunfire and the memories of those who had fallen. Officers and armed civilians, their faces set with determination, coordinated their movements with a precision born of necessity. They moved in a silent pact, bound by the weight of their grim task, each step up the tower's narrow stairwell heavy with the burden of anticipation. The air was thick with tension, each moment stretching interminably as the group neared the top. The walls of the stairwell, once mundane passageways, were now witness to a stark transformation from academic sanctuary to a battlefield's edge. The ascent was slow, deliberate, and fraught with the knowledge that each step could be met with a bullet. As they reached the observation deck, the silence was shattered by the final shots fired by Charles Whitman. The sharp cracks echoed off the tower's stone walls, a chilling reminder of the power the sniper still wielded, even in his final moments. The officers and civilians, undeterred, pressed on, their resolve hardened by the sounds of Whitman's desperation. The breakthrough was sudden, the door to the deck giving way under the combined force of the responders. They burst onto the scene, their eyes quickly taking in the grim tableau before them. The deck was a chaotic sprawl of spent bullet casings and the remnants of hastily consumed provisions, evidence of the long hours Whitman had spent in his deadly vigil. The confrontation was brief yet intense, the culmination of hours of fear and tension. When it was over, the silence that followed was profound. The deck, once a place of panoramic views and peaceful contemplation, was now a crime scene, the air heavy with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the stark reality of the violence that had transpired. In the immediate aftermath, the community struggled to comprehend the full scope of the tragedy. The tower, a fixture of the Austin skyline, had become a symbol of something much darker, a reminder of the day the city had been thrust into the national spotlight for all the wrong reasons. The press, both local and national, began the grim task of reconstructing the timeline, their reports painting a picture of a day marked by horror and heroism. What if this story was erased from history on purpose? The thought lingered in the air as haunting as the memories of the day itself. The magnitude of the tragedy, the lives lost and altered, seemed too significant to be forgotten. Yet there was a palpable fear that the details might fade with time, the lessons unlearned. In the days that followed, the tower stood silent, its shadow long across the campus. Some secrets bleed through generations, unchanged and unspoken, and the events of that day would leave a lasting imprint, not just on the university, but on the entire nation. The Tower of Death, as it had come to be known, was a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the enduring impact of a single day's violence. As dawn broke over the University of Texas campus, the aftermath of August 1st's carnage lay starkly visible. On the observation deck of the tower, Charles Whitman, the architect of this horror, lay dead amid the chaos of his final stand. Bullet casings glittered in the morning sun, scattered across the concrete like grim confetti. The bodies of the fallen, tragic testimonies to the day's brutality were carefully removed by the authorities, their presence a somber reminder of the lives abruptly ended. The press swarmed the scene, their cameras and notepads capturing every detail, every angle of the tragedy. headlines across the nation tried to make sense of the senseless, their bold letters screaming of the massacre from coast to coast. Sniper massacre at university, one headline declared, while another asked, "What drives a man to kill?" Each story pieced together the timeline of terror, reconstructing the sequence of events that had transformed an ordinary summer day into a historic nightmare. The public, hungry for answers, was fed details of Whitman's life and actions. Reports surfaced of his time as a Marine, his academic struggles, and the cryptic final note left for investigators, hinting at mental turmoil and a brain much of a constant turmoil. Yet, even as these facts were laid bare, they painted a picture incomplete and unsatisfying. They told the public nothing of the why that mattered most, but survivors remembered everything. Their stories, fragmented and haunted, filled the gaps left by official accounts, weaving a tapestry of personal tragedy and resilience. As the city of Austin mourned, a broader conversation ignited across the nation. The Tower of Death had not only shattered lives but also pierced the illusion of safety in public spaces. It sparked debates on gun control, mental health, and the responsibilities of institutions in preventing such tragedies. In hushed tones and loud voices, people began to ask if evil had a face, and if it did, could it be as ordinary as that of a student, a Marine, a son? Some secrets bleed through generations, unchanged and unspoken, and as the years would pass, the University of Texas Tower shooting would morph into a dark legend. Theories abounded, some grounded in reality, others in wild speculation. They said evil had a face, but what if it wore many masks? The question lingered, echoing in the classrooms and corridors of the university. The Tower of Death became a case study, a reference point for law enforcement and psychologists trying to understand the mind behind such violence. Yet, with each passing year, the definitive answers seemed to slip further into the shadows of the past, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and warning. As the nation moved forward, the tower stood resilient against the Austin skyline, a stark monument to a day that had irrevocably altered countless lives. The scars of August 1st, 1966, remained, etched not just in stone but in the collective memory of a community forever changed. In the aftermath of the University of Texas Tower shooting, the community of Austin and the nation grappled with the profound implications of the violence that had erupted on that sweltering August day. The incident, branded as the Tower of Death by a somber press, left an indelible mark on American society, reshaping perceptions of safety and trust in public spaces. The Austin Statesman, in a headline dated August 2nd, 1966, declared, "City in mourning, campus tragedy leaves 16 dead," capturing the immediate sorrow that enveloped the city. The roll call of victims, a heart-rending list comprising students, faculty, and bystanders, was published in subsequent editions. Each name was a story cut tragically short, a potential unfulfilled. This public acknowledgement of loss served as a communal mourning ritual, with the newspaper pages turning into a makeshift memorial. As the physical scars began to heal, the psychological wounds proved more resistant. The tower itself, now a stark symbol of the day's horror, stood unchanged against the Austin skyline, its outline a constant reminder of the bloodshed. Conversations about the tower's future were fraught with tension. Some voices called for its demolition, others for its preservation as a somber memorial to the lives lost. Theories about what drove Charles Whitman to such a heinous act proliferated in the absence of clear motives. "The closer you look, the less coincidence explains," became a refrain among those who delved into Whitman's background, searching for warning signs that might have been missed. Was it his noted mental health struggles, his rigorous military training, or something deeper, more intrinsic to his character? Files on the case, thick with investigative reports and psychological analyses remained inconclusively open, a testament to the complexity of human behavior. Urban legends about the tower shooting began to circulate, each iteration adding a layer of myth to the already dense narrative. Whispered stories among students suggested that the tower was haunted by the ghosts of those killed, their presences marked by cold spots and unexplained shadows. These tales, while offering no solace, became a way for the community to articulate its fears and anxieties in a culturally resonant form. The shooting also precipitated changes in how emergencies were handled on campus and beyond. The University of Texas, and indeed many institutions across the country, reassessed their security protocols and communication systems. The inadequacy of the response on that day led to the implementation of more sophisticated alert systems and training programs for handling such crises, setting a precedent that would influence emergency responses nationwide. What was buried here refused to stay hidden. The impact of the tower shooting extended into the national discourse on gun control and mental health support, sparking debates that continue to resonate. The tragedy highlighted the need for better mental health services and more stringent gun control laws, discussions that gained traction as more mass shootings carved their own grim chapters in American history. As the years passed, the Tower of Death was not easily forgotten. Despite the relentless march of time and other ensuing tragedies, the question, what is scarier, the crime itself or how easily it was forgotten, often surfaced in academic and journalistic retrospectives, challenging the public to confront its collective memory and the lessons learned or not learned from that day. The University of Texas Tower, a structure once dedicated to educational aspirations, now also served as a somber reminder of the day when those aspirations were violently disrupted. Its continued presence in the Austin skyline served as a call to remember, a call to learn, and most importantly, a call to prevent history from repeating its darkest days. The University of Texas Tower stands as a stark monument, its outline a constant against the changing cityscape of Austin. Within its walls, the echoes of August 1st, 1966, linger, a reminder that ordinary places can breed extraordinary dread. The tower, a site of academic pursuit, transformed in mere hours into the Tower of Death, a grim landmark in the annals of American violence. In the aftermath, the tower's observation deck was closed to the public, a silent acknowledgement of the horrors that unfolded above the campus grounds. It would remain shut for years, a period during which the community grappled with the visible scar in its midst. The decision to eventually reopen the deck came with mixed emotions, part memorial, part reclaiming of space, an effort to move forward from the shadows of that day. The legacy of the shooting permeates through the generations, influencing policies and procedures. Yet the tower itself demands a more personal reflection. It compels those who walk its campus paths to remember not just the tragedy, but the lives intertwined with its history. Students today pass beneath its gaze, perhaps unaware of the full weight of its past, yet contributing to the narrative of resilience and remembrance. As we conclude this chilling recount of the day that the Tower of Death etched its name into history, we prepare to delve into another dark chapter of human folly. Join us as we explore the depths of another tale where the ordinary becomes ominous. Stay tuned, for the shadows have more stories to tell. In the quiet moments on campus, sometimes it is said that children sing songs that no one had taught them. Near the tower, a haunting reminder that history, no matter how deeply buried, leaves traces that the present can never fully erase.